Hello and welcome to Vendor Trash. Is the title a reference to my opinions, my drawing skills, or both? That's for you to decide. As someone who pretty much just plays retail WoW, Season of Discovery has been an interesting thing to observe from the outside. Conceptually, it's a bit oxymoronic, wanting to combine the old playstyle of WoW but with new content, though I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing. It's just not a version of the game that I personally have much desire to engage with. But some interesting things have come of it, which I've mostly learned just through the headlines of Wowhead articles. One that recently stood out to me was the discovery of Demonfall Canyon. This is a brand new dungeon exclusive to Season of Discovery, located, as you might imagine, at Demonfall Canyon in southeastern Ashenvale, which is of course where Grommash Hellscream slew Manoroth at the end of the Orc campaign in Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos. It's a bit unique in that it requires players to complete a unique quest chain which awards them with the Shadowtooth Illusion Ward, which must be equipped in order to even see the instance portal. This of course harkens back to the concept of attunements that were popular in Vanilla and TBC, and that right there is itself a whole discussion video that we'll get to one day. I believe they also added instanced versions of the Azuragos and Doomlord Kazakh fights. I assume this just has something to do with either server load or making sure that the boss is always available to those who might want to kill them. So I don't really feel they're the same situation, but they were worth mentioning. Anyway, the interior of the dungeon is basically a copy-paste of the open world version of the area. It is a 6-boss dungeon. We're just running through them real quick. We have Grimroot, who is a corrupted ancient, Diatheris the Seeker, a Dreadlord, the Destructor's Wraith, which appears to be a bit of a spectral Felguard, but based on the name, I imagine comes from Manoroth himself. We have Zilbagob, an imp who is riding a Goblin Shredder. We have Pyrannis, who is a fallen druid. And we have Hellscream's Phantom, which is of course an echo of Hellscream himself. Now, seeing as I haven't actually played Season of Discovery, I can't really comment on the difficulty of the dungeon, but given that it is a secret dungeon at level cap, I would assume it is at least harder than the vast majority of vanilla dungeons. Now, why am I even talking about this thing that was added to a game mode that I'm not even playing? And the answer to that is I am greedy. I saw that SoD got an extra dungeon and immediately thought, I want this for retail. Would this relatively low effort dungeon that wasn't even given its own unique loading screen really improve the state of the modern game? Probably not really at all, but still, it'd be cool, right? I'm not gonna be quick to complain about getting extra content. There are a ton of places in this game that at one point were either in development to be used as a dungeon or some other form of content, or just speculated to be. And while sometimes these do later get fleshed out, such as Grim Batol in Cataclysm, usually once we leave an expansion and its associated continental area behind, the ship has kind of sailed on us getting further content from that area. Like, it'd be pretty weird for the War Within to have a dungeon located in Draenor. It's perfectly understandable why. Obviously they want to focus on the new areas, and there's always going to be a limit on how much they can produce. But at the same time, it's a little sad when you look back at previous expansions and how many dungeons we used to get and compare them to the modern day. The Burning Crusade added 16 dungeons, and yes, that one does have the caveat that they would clump 3 or 4 dungeons into a single hub that all shared a tile set, so it's kind of cheating. But Wrath of the Lich King also added 16 dungeons, and these, by and large, had pretty unique tile sets. It's been a bit up and down since then, with Legion peaking with 13 new dungeons. Though since Shadowlands, we've fallen into the trend of 8 new dungeons at launch, with 1 mega dungeon consisting of 8 bosses to be split into 2 M+ dungeons, added later in the expansion. You can even pretty reliably predict there to be 2 dungeons per zone. And look, this isn't entirely a bad thing. If it means the dungeons we do get are of higher quality, then I'm all for this shift. But also, wouldn't it be cool if we got more? So I just wanted to run through some of these potential dungeon ideas real quickly. First off, we had the Stone Talon Caverns. In Warcraft 3, there was a mission where Thrall and Cairn had to venture into this network of caves located in Stone Talon Mountains, where they ran into Jaina and Medivh, who got them all teamed up for facing off against the Legion. This does not seem to be present in WoW at all, and would be easy to implement in the overworld, as you literally just put a cave entrance and instance portal. Then we have Dreadmaul Citadel, which comes at the end of the Exile's Reach starting zone. This is both an actual dungeon and has actually been in retail WoW since Shadowlands. It's simply inaccessible once you finish the zone. It is a 2-boss dungeon, a detail shared only with Alkanite Crypts, and these bosses are Tunk, an Ogron, and the Ogre Necromancer Gorgroth, who reanimates the dragon Ravnir. Aside from the entrance and adjustments for higher level play, it's arguably the easiest of these dungeons to actually implement. There is the Stormwind Prison, which is basically the counterpart to the Stockades. This would be that building in between the Trade District and Old Town, and I believe in the lore it's supposed to be used to hold mages and other magical prisoners. We have Torwatha, which pretty much nobody ever mentions. This was just like a little troll village in Eversong Woods, and there was a big gate set up against the eastern hills of that zone, which basically just resembled the Zulaman entrance, although far less grand. And this gate was later patched out because they weren't going to do anything with it. A more well-known possibility was the Abyssal Maw, which was going to be included in patch 4.2 as a counterpart raid to the Firelands. There's a very obvious entrance right next to Throne of the Tides where this was supposed to go, and the storyline was pretty much dropped as come Legion Neptulon managed to free himself, and that's that. But this one would definitely be interesting. In Throne of the Tides, we're technically considered to be in the Abyssal Maw, but we're very much insulated from the water in this building of sorts, and from what I've seen of the data mined raid assets, that was going to be much more out in the open water. Then of course we have the 3 unused sanctums under Wormrest Temple. Wrath gave us the Obsidian Sanctum and Ruby Sanctum, but we never visited the Emerald, Bronze, or Blue ones. Of course, unless there was an invasion of some sorts, these are considered friendly spaces, so you would need to write a reason for us to go to these sanctums. Although it is interesting because as of Dragonflight, I feel like most of the hatching of dragon eggs is just done at the Ruby life pools now, though it'd also make perfect sense if they didn't just relocate every dragon egg there. We also have the Bay of Storms dungeon. During the alpha or beta of Vanilla WoW, there was an instance portal located in the Bay of Storms of Ajara. This never had any function and was removed before the game went live, and frankly I don't even really know what they would do with this place. It was even pointed down towards the seabed, so yeah. But at some point someone had to have had an idea for it. I've also always thought that Dark Moon Island would be a perfect setting for a dungeon. It's a dark and spooky and creepy place that just leaves you wondering, what else is there here? Of course, that could wind up being complicated since the Dark Moon Fair is only around for 1 week a month. But hey, we're just spitballing here. And there are, of course, dozens of other places that could be used. I'm sure we've all had moments during our normal gameplay where we see something, stop, and go, hey, they could do something here. Are they going to do something here? So yeah, not the most poignant idea for a video, but I had fun. And personally, I'd be kind of excited if Season 2 for War Within rolls around and, surprise, Demonfall Canyon is in the M+ pool. It also sort of invites discussion about the very idea of Classic Plus. Personally, I wouldn't want them to go any further than what Season of Discovery is doing. I think it would lead to some pretty weird divergent timeline stuff, and is probably not the best use of resources. But that's just me, I'm very biased on the matter. Anyway, for this week's drawing, I decided to go with Gromash. It was obviously either going to be him or Manaroth, and I did not feel like drawing a Pit Lord. And yes, this is the uncorrupted AU Grom, not the Fel-corrupted main universe Grom. My reasoning for that was purely aesthetic preference. In general, I think Mag'har orcs just look better than greenskin orcs. I think the main universe Grom had a pretty satisfying story. He was definitely a very flawed character, and his victory against Manaroth certainly doesn't absolve him of his sins, but it was still very poignant that in his final moments he did manage to free himself, as well as all of orc kind. The AU Grom was definitely handled more haphazardly, though that almost certainly has to do with WoD's development as a whole. The whole Draenor is free moment was of course extremely memeable, even though future expansions would make us wish that was all we had to complain about. And of course the Mag'har recruitment scenario was a bit weird. There's the time difference, and Irel becoming a tyrant of the light, and Grom's not Garrosh's son becoming a member of the Lightbound, and Grom sacrificing himself so that we could get Gaera and the others out. The whole thing was a bit of a mess. I don't know why we just didn't get the Maghar orcs from Outland. The only real justification I could come up with was if we were going to get an old grizzled Grom as the racial leader for Maghar orcs, but that didn't even happen. So just why? Just one of the many, many, many mysteries of BFA's writing that we'll probably never get the answers to. I also decided to lean more on the in-game model as inspiration instead of the box art / cinematic model. Those look cool and all, but I always thought Grom's eyes were a little beady, and I just can't do the nipple rings. I'm sorry, I know there's probably people out there that love Grom's nipple rings, but they just make me a little uncomfortable. With that, I will wrap things up. Thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.